Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is one of the greatest RPGs, maybe one of the greatest games ever made. That's not just conjecture on my part. Check every website from PC Gamer to IGN to Game Informer. It's been nearly 20 years since its original release, and yet, at this very moment, there are still almost 1,000 concurrent players on Steam alone. There have been calls for it to be remastered for years now, and at the September PlayStation Showcase, we finally got our wish. The classic so many of us grew up with is finally being remade by none other than Aspyr, makers of ports and remakes for dozens of the world's most popular games, from Civ 6 to Star Wars Republic Commando. Now, it may seem presumptuous of me to start talking about how they should go about making this game, but every massive disappointment starts with huge expectations. And as a gigantic fan of Star Wars and Knights of the Old Republic in particular, I have a vested interest in making sure this game is the gem we've all been dreaming of. So let's talk about 5 ways the KOTOR remake can be the greatest remaster we've ever seen, and 5 ways it could absolutely bomb. I'm Griff from Coerced Fat Cows. Let's go.
Yeah, take it away, Ernie. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Stick to the source material. This is such an obvious one, but it has to be said. Don't reinvent the wheel here. People loved this game because of everything it brought to the table, from its combat system to its galaxy-spanning story to its incredible sci-fi scenery to its lovable and compelling characters. Proper remakes, remasters, and spiritual successors succeed when they understand what made the original so great. That's not to say that you can't improve on some things, we'll get to that later, but don't get carried away. Don't make yourself the center of attention. That's good advice for everyone in every walk of life, I think, but in this particular instance, it's crucial for Aspyr to remember. We as fans love Knights of the Old Republic. We don't care one way or the other about Aspyr, yet. The developers and writers need to remember it's not Aspyr that made this game so exciting for us, it's the game itself. Their job here is to allow us to relive our favorite game the way we remember it. I'd rather them stick too closely to the original than deviate too much. It's not their job to ruin our nostalgia or tell us how things weren't as good back then as we remember. This is a video game. Just give us what we want.
Give me what I want!
Allow yourself a little freedom. This sounds completely contradictory to what I just said, but allow me a second to explain. See, if you play the original 2003 game, you realize how different game making was back then. Camera angles, world design, combat systems, and obviously graphics were so much different. As much as I love the game, you do need some nostalgia goggles to enjoy it fully given its age. So when I say Aspyr devs and writers should not make themselves the center of attention, I don't mean that they should give this one a reskin and call it a day. The key is understanding what makes us so nostalgic about the game and translating that to the modern age. Updating graphics are great, but there's more that goes into it. Changing camera angles during dialogue to get a more cinematic feel would go a long way to recreating the game the way we all remember. Seeing the light glint off the buildings of Terrace, hearing the explosions of grenades and blaster bolts hitting the wall, feeling the differences between the damp forests of Kashyyyk and blue brilliance of Manaan. Imagine all the things you loved about the game as a kid and how you remember them after having not played for a few years. Aspyr is allowed to take liberties so long as they stay within the framework of what made the first game so great. Surround yourself with people who love the source material. Now, I don't mean to stray into the controversial, but it has to be said. There is a writer on the KOTOR staff who has been not complimentary of the original game in the past. Now, this is one writer who's made comments in the past, so this doesn't doom the game, far from it. But it gets to a larger issue. Who are the people behind this remaster? Are they super fans of the original working on a passion project? Or do they see this as an opportunity to create the game they've always wanted, and the Star Wars name is just how they'll sell copies? We've seen examples of both, but just know, in this case, Star Wars fans are both accepting of anyone who loves what we love and unforgiving of anyone who uses the franchise as their own personal platform. This isn't too different from our first don't. Be faithful to the game and understand that your job is to give fans what we've wanted for over a decade. Revamp a legendary combat system. Turn-based combat has been around since the advent of the playing card, and it's been in RPGs since the very beginning. The turn-based combat in KOTOR is legendary, one of the prime examples of that system ever. But let's not forget the demands and limitations of games in 2003 severely limited what could be done with a turn-based system. Modern achievements of turn-based combat, like Persona, Final Fantasy, and Divinity Original Sin, have completely changed turn-based combat in the last several years. That gives KOTOR a ton of options to go with, either the very deliberate but deeper style of Persona, or the faster, more action-oriented style of new Final Fantasy games. Either way, the idea of having more options and a much deeper combat system built on the back of one of the innovators of the style is an incredible prospect. Don't add to the incredible cast. You noticing a pattern? The original cast of characters was one of the pillars upon which the original game was built. The fact that you might end up with half of a full group by the end of the game, depending on your decisions, felt like a genuinely groundbreaking system at the time. It still does. So, while we should see some changes in the dialogue and cutscenes like I said earlier, you don't need to change the characters too much. Each one belonged in the game because each one had entirely different motivations, personalities, and goals. The original writers understood human nature, that much is clear. So there's no need to overthink the main characters they wrote so beautifully 20 years ago. Flesh out the world. This is a very pie-in-the-sky idea here because it's entirely dependent on how much leeway Disney allows this game to have, despite the fact that this game takes place thousands of years before any Disney story. I don't pretend to be an expert on any of these legal things. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, again, as a super fan. But just because I've requested the writers not take too many liberties doesn't mean that I don't want them to do their jobs. These are professionals. They know far more than me about video game writing and video game development. So we shouldn't ask that they be constricted to just an update of the game. One of the things that made the original so great was how much it explored the vast Star Wars universe. Obviously, limitations of the time meant that you couldn't do much outside the main story and the main levels, meaning that it wasn't a true open world game. But there was still enough there that we got the experience, the culture, and the diversity of the Star Wars universe. With more resources and far more technology at their disposal, Aspyr has the opportunity to expand on that even further. I'm not saying give us new planets and stuff like that, although that would be cool as hell. Rather, give us a few more developed side missions in different parts of the worlds that we wouldn't recognize from the original. Don't spread yourself too thin. This video is quickly becoming me counterpointing myself here, but that's what a lot of game development is. The technology to do everything we want to do individually is out there, but capital, labor, and time are scarce. So even though I just requested that the game explore the Star Wars universe a bit more, it should not be done at the expense of recreating the core game. What we have to remember is this may not be the only KOTOR game ever released again. A great performance here could lead to a sequel, much as the performance of the original led to KOTOR 2, a game many people liked as much or more than the original. So the devs should not concern themselves with being overbroad in this game if it will prevent them from doing their job first and foremost, and that is remaking a classic video game. Make sure that part is good and expand from there if you have the time. Which leads me actually into the fifth don't for today. I know we're kind of going out of order here, but bear with me. Keep everything in perspective. In a vacuum, it's incredibly hard to tell how your work is going. In any work environment, you're surrounded with experts in your particular field who have a completely different set of priorities, preferences, and perspectives than the consumer. The worst scenario in a situation like this is a game developer who doesn't understand their audience and develops for themselves, losing their core mission entirely. Angry Joe perfectly simulated what that's like from a developer perspective, which I will now share with you in this authentic clip.
It's It's not something that everyone will like. Definitely not. We're gonna have people who even hate it. But we're gonna have a lot of fans as well. A lot of people will love it. A lot of people will laugh. It'll be an exciting thing. No! No! No, it's fucking not! Nobody's laughing!
What that guy said. There are a lot of negative stereotypes out there about Star Wars fans, and if a studio buys too much into those rumors, they may start to develop for themselves and not for the fans. I think most of us watching this video would consider ourselves passionate Star Wars fans. We're not a toxic group or even a mean group, we just want Star Wars content. This ties all the don'ts from this video together. In the end, as specific as I've been, I only ask that the developers not do one thing: lose sight of what their job really is. And finally, stick to the tone. I've saved the most distinctive aspect of the original Knights of the Old Republic for last: the tone. As much as everything else in the game helped contribute to its success, nothing would have mattered if the game did not have a tone and setting that you felt immersed in. But, not coincidentally, the tone the game took just pulled me in even more. As a kid, I truly felt like I was experiencing a Star Wars universe with sweeping vistas, deep jungles, mysterious temples, creepy bunkers, sinister ruins. The music matched it all. The characters were lighthearted and funny while also contributing to the serious nature of the story you were playing. For years, one of the buzzwords in gaming and content creation more broadly has been immersion. And we've tried to achieve that with bigger screens, more pixels, louder sound, virtual reality. All of that stuff is cool, don't get me wrong. But true immersion doesn't need all of that. I feel immersed in Knights of the Old Republic playing it on a 16-inch laptop screen on my deck, not because the technology pulled me in, but because the game itself did. That is the most important thing for a developer to do: make me feel once again like I'm living my own Star Wars fantasy. That was the hallmark of the original game, and it's why we're getting a remake of that title in the first place. Have any more do's and don'ts for the Knights of the Old Republic remake? Let us know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe for all the CFC content. Maybe one day you'll even find out what our name really means. And check out the links in the description for other places you can hang out with us. We'll see you next time.
What is this planet coming to, huh? Slummy's just walking around the upper city.
Shouldn't you go to Lord says you belong, Slummy?
This is ritual.
Yeah, like he said, these streets are for upper city citizens. You better get out of the way if you know what's good for you.
A drink? Hey! For a slummy, you ain't so bad. Come on, boys, this slummy's buying the next round.
No way, forget it. No more drinks. We're late enough as it is.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Maybe next time, slummy. Come on, fellas, let's go.